In this week's episode, I am joined by DEI advisor Denise Wells, who's also an executive director of public relations and communications, an author, a speaker, and advocate. This week, our conversation is about history made at the Cannes Film Festival, new accessibility updates at airports, Melinda French Gates' new pledge, and more. Hey there, my name is Bernadette Smith. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I've found is that there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for DEI stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these inclusive actions and policies within your own organization to help you build a more inclusive world. Let's get started. Denise, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Bernadette. Let's have some fun and let's talk invariably about DEI and what we can do to move it forward.
That's right. Well, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background?
Okay, so I work as executive director for public relations and communications at a local 2-year college. And the way that I kind of made my segue into DEI and practicing that company years ago, making sure that we were in compliance with what needed to be housed on our website, starting at that with the communications level, but then also that we were making sure that we didn't have any barriers to access for any of the services and benefits that we were offering to communities who needed a little extra help, maybe sometimes with the application process. And then from there, became the chair of DEI for the Georgia Professional Human Services Association, and learned to just kind of embed DEI into all of my practices, no matter what I'm doing. I kind of fell in love with it all,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. And I like to see folks getting what they're supposed to have, and so here we are.
I love it. Thank you. And I love that you are embedding it into all your practices because I think that's where we really need to go, especially as our world is increasingly diverse. So, we got to bring that lens, that DEI lens to everything. And also because we just really need to be mindful about all of the different ways that we could be accidentally excluding folks and accidentally not giving folks a fair shot. So I think when we embed it into our practices and to our decision making, then it can also become much more sustainable.
I think you're absolutely right about that.
So talk to me a little bit about some of the practices, some of the elements, places you've embedded DEI in your work.
Well, I'm really an advocate as far as advertisement is concerned, especially when you're talking about for a college enrollment, and making folks want to come to your school. Make sure that those folks are seeing themselves in your advertisement. The more I can be diverse, the more I can be inclusionary in the things that I'm putting out, the things that I'm promoting, the students that I'm highlighting, the programs that we're offering. If a student or potential student sees themselves in that marketing, they're more likely to want to enroll. They're more likely to want to finish and be a part of the overall structure of what you're putting forward. And so I make sure, I'm darn sure of it, that we are celebrating the different cultures that need to be celebrated. And also in our print media, you're seeing the faces and spaces that need to be represented, that we are really an open house, open store for all who are interested in higher learning.
I love that. I think it is so important because we want to feel represented. We want to feel seen, and when we see others, then we can imagine ourselves in those situations. So it certainly makes a lot of sense, and I think it certainly can translate over to the workplace as well, not just in higher education, but in all kinds of marketing. Really, it's really about marketing more generally, not specifically about higher ed, but we want to be represented. So a lot of stories that end up in 5 things are about representation. So we will talk a little bit about that today, Denise. But tell me, in your work, what is giving you hope?
I think what's giving me hope, and some of it I didn't realize until I read your newsletter this weekend, is the young lady at Boston University who
Mm.
really advocated and said, listen, this dormitory is named after someone who is a known racist. It's not right. I don't like it. And used her power, leveraged her uniqueness of understanding kind of the implications of having that go on in the way that it would be. um, I love seeing that the young people are still getting riled up about the things that are worth getting riled up about, and
Yeah.
so I'm hopeful about that. And then as I think of my own alma mater, the University of Georgia, same kind of thing. And I'm going to get off higher ed in a minute, but I'm passionate about it. But President Moorhead really gets it as well. He's even reaching back to name permanent spaces on campus
Mm.
for people who were maybe the first to get degrees or to play football and just really honoring legacies that we've never seen honored before.
Oh, I love that.
And so I think I'm hopeful about the ways in which we are changing things and honoring right that they deserve.
Mm. That is really beautifully said. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that because legacy really matters, and it's not something that I spend much time thinking about. So that does give me hope as well. So I appreciate that. In this week's Five Things newsletter, I wrote about a cringeworthy story that a potential client shared with me. And it was a conversation that this person told me over a Zoom meeting. They were telling a story about how a lesbian employee was referencing a vacation with her wife, and a well meaning coworker responded, "Oh, my neighbor has a sweet lesbian daughter," which is they're trying to relate, right? They're trying to connect, but it's also kind of a cringeworthy moment. And I've had those plenty of times when people have tried to relate to me. My best friend from college was gay, kind of thing. And the advice I gave in that situation, because I don't want to punish anyone for just trying to connect, right? I don't want to punish anyone. I want to focus on connection rather than division. So the advice that I gave was to sort of just smile and redirect. Lesbians are everywhere. We appreciate your openness. So tell us more about that vacation, kind of thing. So I was wondering, Denise, if you had any kind of advice to add to how to handle these cringeworthy moments where we do get tokenized sometimes.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
Mhm.
And of course, being African American, I've seen that as well. Oh, my best friends are Black, or, my neighbor is Black, that kind of thing. I think that, like you, I don't want to punish anyone for wanting to connect, but I do always think that it's opportunity for engagement as well as for learning.
Mhm.
And so, hopefully, you're close enough with the person you're speaking with that you can give those, loving acts, I should say. I love that you are sharing something that connects us. But here's what happens when you share in that way. Usually,
Mhm.
gay people slash Black people, whatever the people may be,
Mhm.
um, have dealt with so many people who are insincere that there's no way to tell whether or not you're also insincere or whether you're just really trying to connect. And so here's language maybe that you could use instead the next time you're in that kind of a scenario. And it'll help you connect even further with that person that you're trying to bond with. And so I think when you lovingly offer it as advice, people
Mhm.
can accept it. When your response is advice, but it also you can tell that it's offended advice,
Mhm.
offensive advice, or you've been offended by what they've said. I think that's where it gets to be a little melodramatic and it's a purpose. So we have to maintain composure and
Yeah, I agree. Let's get into this week's five things. Okay, this first story this week comes from my alma mater, Boston University. So, speaking of higher education and speaking of the story that you started to reference earlier, this is from Boston University, where Anna Ward, a BU student and Osage Nation member, when she first arrived on campus, she realized a dorm was named after Miles Standish. And Standish was brutally violent to Native Americans. So Anna and other students and faculty led a campaign resulting in the dorm being renamed 610 Beacon Street. And I will tell you, I've been in Miles Standish or 610 Beacon Street many times a long time ago, and I had no idea. But again, it's just awesome to see this kind of change and to see people coming together to make this, to change the legacy.
As we spoke about in the earlier piece of our time wasn't right, and that others rallied behind her, it happened. And so I think it's a wonderful story of what we can do from an advocacy level that would really be received and really be allowed to move forward in ways that just really matter to folks.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think the advocacy piece is really key, and we don't always talk about that. The second story this week comes from Major League Baseball, which has officially integrated Negro League stats into its historical records, recognizing over 2,300 players, including Josh Gibson, known as one of the greatest hitters of all time.
Mm.
His Negro League stats surpass those of Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth. So, what a it's about time, right? I mean, so many of these stories are it's about time, but we got to acknowledge that. We got to celebrate that.
Yeah. I think this is super. I'd be more pleased to his father actually played Negro League baseball. He was a player on the Atlanta Black Crackers baseball team years ago, way before I was born, even. And so I know that he's smiling down from heaven to hear that these stats are being added. He played along with Red Moore, or we called him Red Mo, I think is the way his baseball name was mentioned during Negro League. But there's a resurgence that happened years ago in my adult life. And so I had grown up my entire life not knowing that my Sunday school teacher, Red Mo, and my grandfather had played Negro baseball together until that resurgence happened. And so both of them are gone now. They've left us, but the legacy began before they passed away. And now to hear that the legacy is moving forward even more with this new addition to records being added to MLB, near and dear to my heart, near and dear to my family's heart. This is a great day for baseball and a great day for Negro League baseball.
Mm. You just gave me goosebumps, Denise. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that story. It was it's really sweet. So thank you. And I am sure Red and your grandfather are very happy today. So great, great news. Okay, the third story this week comes from Melinda French Gates, who has pledged $1 billion to support women's rights and families globally. So, this is sort of her new initiative after leaving the Gates Foundation. She's really focused on reproductive rights and gender equality, and she has given $20 million each to 12 partners for the purpose of advancing women's power. So she's basically made 12 amazing women. They're individual grant makers to be able to identify places in their community organizations that can really use it. I love this, especially when we're seeing pushback.
Yeah, I think it's important for the different pipelines that she's really kind of outlined, but really important for women in general. And when I think about gifts of this nature, I think about impact.
Mm,
You know, it's one thing to leave a designation for someone, but to leave one in such a way that they really can make the impact that
mhm,
needs to be made on that particular topic. I think Melinda gets it. I think she understands they're not just going to need support, but they're going to need support at a high level to make sure that we can move the needle on these things. And so, I love that she made the donorship small, but the partner small, but the amount in which each partner would receive so large,
mhm.
so that you really can make the impact that needs to be made. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm going to be reading more on this and figuring out what is actually happening, tracing kind of where they're going to go in this framework. But I think it's a wonderful day for for those particular topics and the 12 partners that'll be chosen.
Absolutely. And those partners are a cross section of the world. And so they can really they know the impact that needs to be made in their individual communities. So, so important to Keep things local. All right. The fourth story this week comes from airports around the United States, where travelers with disabilities will soon have smoother trips thanks to new federal aviation program updates. So, this new law requires better training for airline staff assisting wheelchair users, accessibility updates to kiosks, airport apps, and websites, universal changing stations for diapers, and improved signage at airports. The things that I take for granted.
Very much so. And coming from my background with ADA, this makes my heart flutter a little bit as well. And they are things that we as those who don't have these difficulties do take for granted. I think that we've all seen though that person who's in a wheelchair or that person who is having difficulty navigating struggle.
Mhm.
Well, let's step back for a moment. Those of us who don't have any difficulty seemingly have difficulty navigating the airport.
That's true.
But imagine how exacerbated that is if you indeed have a challenge. And so I love that someone in airport strategy really kind of and I don't know if this was maybe a federal mandate or whether this was airports thinking on their own. I haven't read that
Federal.
part to know. It was federal. I
Yep.
figured it might be. So I love that someone at the federal level is indeed thinking through the kind of level of access and again, removing any barriers there might be. Hopefully there's more to come for other demographics who also experience challenges, but we'll take this as a win.
Absolutely. And also, we know that, and I'm sure you know that when we make things easier for people with disabilities, we make things easier for everyone. So it's kind of win-win. What I love is the win-win-wins, right? Where everyone wins. And there are a lot of those things out there, and we just need to keep doing more of that stuff.
Yeah. You can even say for staff, if there's staff who are spending additional time because something very simple, maybe, or even something maybe not simple, but just deserves to be put in place, that preserves that staff person's time, energy, effort, so that they don't have to deal with that. They can move on to other things that require their time. And so anything, like you said, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for everyone involved, for other passengers who maybe are held up because this is taking longer because of a barrier, for the person experiencing the barrier, and then for the staff having to deal with the barrier. It's a win-win-win.
Absolutely. And you know what? There are probably going to be a few more people traveling these days, which probably means a little more change for the airlines as well. So, you know what?
Ah,
The bottom
absolutely.
line, the bottom
That
line
bottom line.
matters. Okay, the last story this week comes from the Cannes Film Festival, which made history by awarding the Best Actress honor to Carla Sofia Gascon, the first out transgender woman to win in its 77 years. She starred in a musical crime comedy film, Emilia Perez, which is about a Mexican drug lord who comes out as transgender. I love this. I love talk about representation. I mean, this is a huge barrier.
I think they're taking more risks, and I'm seeing a lot of even on streaming platforms, but also in the movie theater as well, and on the independent film seeing more and more representation for more and more different types of communities, and also seeing the awards kind of follow in that trajectory as well. Who knows? Was it maybe some of the arguments that were made about lack of diversity in awarding years prior that's maybe the impetus for some of this? Whatever that reason may be, I want to say first, happy Pride Week to those who are celebrating this week. But then also, what a significant milestone for the community to see this level of engagement and award. I do have to say, as I think about things that happened during their festivities, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Kelly Rowland, and I think it was Lee Jung Jae, and one other lady. I can't remember her name. There was a TV host and model, Saya Potinsky, I think it's her name, who experienced backlash on the red carpets. So for all that,
Microaggressions or actual aggressions on the
yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
for all that, the strides that were made with the award, there were still maybe some cleanup, some work that needs to be handled or done better. We cannot make the entire festival responsible for one person's actions,
Right.
but it'd be interesting to see what the festival decides to do in the wake of that one person's actions.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm sure that there's going to be some sort of training, but you can't train away everything. I know that they try, but but I think that I agree. We have to talk about that stuff too, and we have to acknowledge the work that remains to be done, because otherwise we're just going to get complacent. So it's not just good vibes. So thank you for reminding me of that. All right. This week's call to action is that it is LGBTQ Pride Month. And remember that Pride started as an act of rebellion, and Pride parades are still forms of protest in many places. So you can learn a little bit about how Pride is celebrated around the world on the Outright website, and you can take a look in the show notes. Denise, how can folks stay in touch with you?
Oh, easy, easy. I am on all platforms as I am LD Wells. I am LD Wells on all platforms. And so follow me, follow me, follow me. I'm usually talking about something that's important or passionate to me, to communications, to DEI, to collegiates, all of the above. And so I love the work that I do. I love meeting and engaging with new followers all the time. And so let's have some fun.
Awesome. Well, you have been a really wonderful guest, Denise. It's the first time we've met, and I really enjoyed talking to you. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you have a great week, folks. Have a great week. And if you don't already subscribe to the Five Things newsletter, you can get it at fivethingsdei.com. Thank you for listening to 5 Things in 15 Minutes. I hope you found yourself inspired by at least one of this week's stories. If you did, would you mind sharing it with a colleague and leaving us a review on your favorite podcasting platform? And if you don't already get my 5 Things newsletter, join at fivethingsdei.com. I'm Bernadette Smith, and I'll see you next week right here for 5 Things in 15 Minutes, bringing good vibes to DEI.